Thank you for the Headhunter team for putting this seminar series together. My name is Reddi Kotha. I'm an associate professor at Singapore Management University in the strategy and organization area. I study and teach innovation and entrepreneurship. So today I'm going to talk to you about one of the important sources of breakthrough innovation, which is lead users. What we are going to do is not to survey the vast literature and evidence on innovation. What we are going to do is deep dive into one concept called lead users. I'm going to go through this concept. I'm also going to showcase how we teach concepts at SMU, how we try to make this interactive even in the Zoom world of trying to get you to participate and do deep learning, right? So let me get started. So let's start with innovation, right? We all buy into the concept that innovation is really important for us, right? And there are many things about innovation. There are many concepts, many tools, many frameworks. In fact, we are overwhelmed by tools, concepts, and methods to think about innovation. However, one of the most important sources of systematic innovation is lead users. And it is less understood what are lead users and how do we create breakthrough innovation using lead users. And today I would focus on that. Right? Before I get into that, right, let me talk to you about the agenda for today. The agenda for today is I'm going to give you a short video, then I'm going to ask you to do a task individually. If you were at SMU and you were in our programs, we would send you into breakout rooms and ask you to do and come back with your solutions and then inform the plenary in the classroom. But let's try even in this Zoom world to do this. Once you've come back and have done this task, I've debriefed you, then we'll go into the theory and practical importance of lead users. So once we've understood the concept, then I'm going to say, how can you then either become a lead user or take lead user concept and come up with breakthrough innovations? So I've talked a little bit about what's the agenda. I've introduced myself to you. Now I want to know a little bit about you. I'll request my colleagues at HeadHunt to run a short poll to see what your background is, and then I'll ask you the second question. Please take a minute or two to answer this question so I understand is in our audience and so that I can pitch my wares so that I can resonate with your backgrounds and experience. Okay, I hope you can see it as well. Okay, 2/3 of you have over 10 years of experience, working experience. So this is sort of the managerial and work experience that comes in. To our master's programs in SMU, the average is around 7 years of experience. So what I'm going to talk to you will be centered around this. Of course, I'm also going to talk and introduce concepts that is widely available for accessible for everyone. Now, let me ask you the second question that's related to the innovation. I want you to answer this question. You might feel this might not be the perfect representation of yourself, but pick an answer that is closest to what you are comfortable with if none of the five resonate to you. I'm just, okay, thank you. The poll's closed. So let's review what your backgrounds or what your goals or interests are, right? The first thing I see here is by far the largest segment is you are working in corporations and you want to lead change. You want to become the agents of change and become corporate entrepreneurs, right? More than a third of you have answered this. The second part of the second largest component, and then we see a lot of this, is you are change makers in the service sector, your change makers in the government sector, your change makers in social and not-for-profit enterprises. And then about one-fifth of you, about less than one-fifth of you want to be the entrepreneurs, leaders of change, come up with breakthrough ideas and technologies. And then we have interest from people with more experience who want to mentor or become experts in innovation and lead. When others are leading innovation, they want to advise them, encourage them, and give them feedback and serve as mentors. We have a small percentage of you who are from family business. That's the distribution. So why I ask this question is, regardless of who you are in these five buckets, it's important for you to understand where breakthrough innovations come from. Usually, when we think about breakthrough innovations, we think about lone genius or a serendipitous event or some kind of an intrinsic ability, right? So, what I'm going to talk to you today is about lead users as a systematic source of breakthrough innovations, right? So, let me get into this concept by showing you a short video. Let me close the poll here, then I can move forward. Okay, so I'm going to show a short video that takes about 2 minutes time. What I want you to do when you watch this video is look at the terrain and the problems and challenges that come from the terrain. What are all the problems you see about the terrain? And then I want you to focus on one thing. Think about the shoes of these people in the video and see what can you do as changes to these shoes that can handle some of the problems that arise in this video. So let me repeat the task to you when you watch the video. You're watching the video not as a passive person, but you're taking notes. What are you taking notes of? First, you're going to identify the challenges in the terrain. Second, then you're going to focus on one thing, that is the shoes, and then see the third, which is what are the changes you can do to the footwear that could handle some of the questions that that come up. I see a hand raised. Let me check. If you would be, Nicholas, if you could type this out in the chat function, please. I could see the question if you have questions. I have not pressed the play in the video. I paused the video, right? I'm giving instructions. If that addresses your question, very good, Nicholas. If not, type it in the chat and I'll look at what you're saying. So let me go to the video then. Okay. Here's what I would like. You could watch the video. I'm going to start the video.
This short video will illustrate a typical hash run in Singapore in 2007. The hash was founded in Kuala Lumpur in 1938. In 1961, it came to Singapore, and from where it spread to all across the world. On! 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 You can run the hash all over the world. If you want to find the closest chapter to you, just Google hash house harriers.
Okay, I take it you've watched this video. Now I want you to take a 30, 45 seconds to list all the problems you've identified with the terrain, right? Come up with a list for yourself, write down this list of all the problems you've come up with the terrain. And then think about solutions that you could do that can overcome the challenges with the terrain focused on footwear. You can come up with many solutions for many different things, but I want all of us to focus on one item. That's the shoe, right? If it helps your thinking and you're a visual person, try to draw a shoe for yourself on a piece of paper and think about those problems and solutions that you could come up. Take a minute or two to do this, and then I will ask you the first question. And then you can type out the answers in the question answer that's been opened up. Please take a minute for this. Okay, now let's do it in stages, please. Can I get you to type out what are the problems you think you've seen in the video with the terrain? Just list the problems that you think can come up with the terrain, right? You can do it using your chat function. I see from Susan who says uneven terrain in the chat function. Very good, Susan. Others, please. What are the other things you've come up with? Forest areas, slippery, problems in terrain, slippery, muddy terrain. Puddles, yes, very wet. Slippery topsoil from Rebecca. Nails, very good, Tektan, right? Nails, dangerous, uphill. So you might think about grip and other problems. Steep, yeah, uphill, steep. Thick vegetation, very good. Shoes may be stuck in mud, excellent, Adrian. Okay, anything else that we haven't seen here? I'll hold this for 15 seconds. If you feel that something we've not covered here, if you want to type this out, please type out in the chat function. Okay, we are now going to solutions, climb over. Okay, okay. Now we have a set of problems that we've identified, right? It's muddy, uneven terrain, vegetation, there are logs, it's uphill, downhill, it's wet, and there are nails and sharp objects there. These are a bunch of problems we've identified, right? There are rocks and other things, yeah? Now I want you to say, come up with the solutions you think focused on the footwear. Please focus on the footwear and not other implements, right? Now take 45 seconds to think about solutions or a minute and then type out these solutions. Haha. Being with you, you say a better trail. No, the object is not to have a better trail. Thick soles, thank you, Sharon. Waterproofing. Kason says tear resistance, waterproof footwear. Mid-size shoes cut above the ankle, good grip. No lace shoes because you don't want your laces to get tangled with the vegetation. Improve the grip of these shoes. Very good. Water drainage, very good, MZ Chua. Water drainage, water will invariably get in, right? Army boots, the huge big army boots that go there, right? Mid-high shoes are better. Glow in the dark, perhaps it gets dark. Gloves, now we're going away from shoes to gloves because you might fall on sharp things, right? Very good. Okay, excellent. You identified major problems. You also come up with solutions to the footwear. So this exercise sort of has you looking at a video, looking at challenges and coming up with solutions. Now you're becoming an innovator. Now you're becoming a problem solver. This is one of the steps that you can start the innovation process. Let me move forward and talk to you how, let me try to link this exercise to what I talked to you about lead users, right? Uh, and here I'm going to talk to you about what are lead users and how we should understand lead users. To understand this concept, I will play a short video from from a professor at MIT who's done his work, some of the path-breaking work on lead users and has developed this concept well, Professor Von Hippel at MIT. Right? Let me click forward. Okay. And now I'm going to play the video for a couple of minutes. I want all of you to listen to how Professor Von Hippel defines lead users and what are the examples he gives, right? And then I will ask you to type out in a chat function your understanding of lead users. Okay? You're already keyed up. Let's hear from Professor Von Hippel.
And industry. What are lead users? Lead users have two characteristics. First, they have a high incentive to solve a problem, and so they may innovate. After all, as you know, necessity is the mother of invention. Second, they are ahead of the target market in an important dimension, so that what they want in the present is what the market as a whole will want in the future. Let me give you an example of one or two lead user innovations. Take Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web. Tim needed hypertext and networked computers for his own work. That's why he developed it. It was a lead user innovation because the market as a whole, as you all know, then followed, and it became a major cultural phenomenon.
During the course of a study, teams seek out lead users both within the target markets and lead users in analogous fields and other industries as well. Innovation in automotive braking systems illustrates the value of looking for lead users outside as well as within your targeted markets.
Many of the safety features that we take into ordinary account nowadays in automobiles were actually developed in aerospace first. For example, the braking systems were developed there because the aircraft people cared a lot more about stopping an aircraft. It was before the end of the runway. So you could see that the incentive to do the same stopping problem was there in aerospace as well, but in an exaggerated form, and you can bring it into the auto field from this advanced analog market.
So let me pause here and then link the small exercise we've done to the concept explained by Professor Von Hippel on lead users. So lead users have extreme needs, right? And then they need to innovate. The example given is Tim Berners-Lee inventing the World Wide Web, which is all the platform, which the entire system of communication that we have between us going on now, right? It's the foundation, right? Tim Berners-Lee needed something for his work, and nothing there was available that could do this. So he sat down and wrote this, right? And also the version of the problem is more magnified. The example of automobile braking versus aircraft braking, the aircraft braking, the problem is much more magnified and the importance is much more magnified. So the innovations there then can be taken to analogical markets of automobiles, right? So we should think about lead users as somebody with extreme needs. And that's why I made you watch this small short video about these hashouts runners, because they run in trains and terrains that are a little bit extreme. When we go out for a run, we don't think about going into this muddy, ziggy, secondary jungle rainforest in Singapore, right? But if we went and studied these extreme users, what are the innovations we would come up with this? And the extreme need and the lack of products makes the people to innovate. And if the rest of the market follows, now you have something of a breakthrough innovation, right? A lead user innovation. Let me show this to you in a graph, right? So in this graph is a demonstration of, there's a circle you can see that is in red, which says lead users. Now, tell me what is distinct about lead users in this graph. There are early adapters, routine users, and laggards, right? What makes the lead users early? They're ahead, right? What is the other dimension that makes them early? When I ask you to tell me, I want you now to type in the chat function and see what you can think about that sets these lead users apart, just by what we've seen and understood from the video, 2 videos in our exercise. What is one dimension here that's already there? Yes, they need to solve their problem. Very good. Others? Okay, they can be mislabeled. True, there are many concepts. Lead users create solution to their own problems. Excellent. They have the problem. But why? Why do they create solutions to their own problems? I think this is an excellent point. Can somebody answer this question? Why do they sit down and innovate? Why do they create solutions to their own problems? Kason, if you were in class, you would get golden points for this. Perfect. Perfect, right? That's because there are no commercially available solutions. Because they have a big problem and they're sitting here, right? What would you do then? And they have a big problem. And this is a problem that they deeply and passionately care about. They look in the market and look, none of the commercially available solutions solve their needs, right? So they sit down and innovate. They innovate because they don't set out to be innovators, but they're forced to innovate. Excellent case, right? Very good answer. So that's the dimension that sets about lead users apart, right? Very good. Now, let's summarize lead users again, right? This graph allows us to understand lead users. They are ahead of the mark. There are no commercially available solutions. And they have a great need. They're sitting down, nothing's available. So for them to function, they then have to become innovators. Then they sit and innovate. And they're ahead of the market in 5, 6, 7 years ahead of the time. So then lead users are a systematic way of creating new products, new services, new innovation when nothing exists in the marketplace, right? So they're systematically ahead of this. Now, I've described and defined to you what lead users are. And why are they ahead of the market? Because there are no commercially available solutions. Whatever solution they come up with is ahead of the market. Of course, whether the rest of the market will follow, will this become big, is a separate and an interesting and an important question, right? I will address that as we go through. But first, we have to define lead users. If I could see all of your screens, I would say, give me thumbs up. You got you understood the concept, right? But if you have any questions, type in the chat. I will get to that either now or as I go through this, right? But let me move forward. And if the concept is slightly unclear, I'll come back and revisit this again, right? Okay, let me link it to another other concept. The people who've done lead users have come from Professor Von Hippel. He studied and his graduate students from MIT in the East Coast of the US have looked at technology, have looked at games, play, computer software. On the West Coast of the US, there's a more entrepreneurial Silicon Valley tradition of startups and breakthrough startups. And when the experts there, Steve Blank, who's the founder of the Lean Startup movement, says, who should entrepreneurs go to when they want to take their products and services and test them, right? He says most entrepreneurs go to people who are not even aware they have a problem, right? Which is the second base of this pyramid, right? He says you should be going to people who have aware of the problem. They've been looking for solutions. And when you present the solution, they're willing to work with you. It'll be best if they also have a budget so that they can pay you while you're doing your testing and prototyping, right? But have you seen here? They're assembled a solution of paths, right? Which means they're already trying to do something by themselves. They're already innovators. So if you go to them with a solution, you can learn from them, and you can also develop an innovation that you can then take to the market, right? So assemble the solution of paths, which means you don't have to come up with everything yourself. You can go to people with the versions of a problem and see what they are doing to solve their problem, because there are no commercially available solutions. And you can learn from these different people and come up with an integrated solution that then perhaps can go to the market. Right? So I'm an academic, I do research. So I draw on research to give you foundation for what would we say. It's a deep, so I review some intellectual papers and research here. So if you look at this study by Sonali Shah, who's a Von Hippel's graduate student, she looks at the fun industries, windsurfing, snowboarding, skateboarding. And she has these interesting findings across these industries that show most of the play innovations come from users. And if you see that red bar, the number of users increasing, right? It increases dramatically after a certain point of time. But notice innovations by manufacturers, which is the dark blue bar, doesn't happen in the early parts. Users are at the forefront of making things. So if you want to think about innovation, which people in the R&D labs who are coming up new products and services which the world can use, which is a supply push innovation, right? They are, sometimes these might work, but there are lots of innovation that's happening in the field. We want you to think about these innovations because they are to problems that exist that don't have any solutions yet. And you see, they classify what is the source of them, right? The systematic major improvement, first of the kind, it turns out that users and lead users are systematically the source of these breakthrough innovations in the studies they have done. I've talked about games, fun, skating, but it's also true with industrial products. It's also true with mountain biking. It's also true with computer software. Users with the biggest version of the problem, with no commercially available solutions, sit down and become innovators. They become what is called as lead users. When they come up with a solution, they become lead users. And there's no other commercially available product. So the lead users then has to have these two important dimensions as identified by Kaysen. Again, I refer back to Kaysen, as you can see in the chart. He says, no available solution in the market, right? Okay. So the studies I showcase here are meant to see this is a widespread phenomena and not just limited to like play or things like this, right? We see it widespread. Okay, now let me pause here and sort of take a review what we've covered so far. What we've covered so far is I've given you a small task to watch a video and identify problems and then come up with solutions. That sets your creativity and innovation juices flowing. And then I situated you and explained what lead users are and why they are important. And the definition of lead users and the examples given by Professor Von Hippel in his video and some of the examples that I've mentioned and covered. Now, let me supplement your learning by giving you one more example from the Singaporean context so that you understand there are many ways you can view this concept, and then I will help your understanding by looking at more examples, right? So I hope you can see this. Let me just move my chat function so that I can read the quote while you read it as well. So this is Dr. Tae Hong. He's a consultant dermatologist at National Skin Care Center, which is the epic body in Singapore where most of the difficult and really extreme versions get referred to them, right? And then he gets patients for whom this itch and this was so unbearable that they express this in really stark words, right? They can't sleep, they can't work, and they're considering even the extremes. I mean, this is, I mean, it's words, but still gives you the sense of pain they have, right? So Dr. Tay, his colleagues, they were all looking at this, and they tried lots of commercially available solutions, expensive, inexpensive, steroid, non-steroid, but still for the persistent set of people, this has been a big problem, right? And Dr. Tay then says, okay, I need to come up with something here. I need to help my patients. What is available commercially is not doing the thing. It's not that Dr. Tay himself has a problem, but his patients have this problem, and then he wants to help them, right? And for him to function well, he needs to come up with a solution. What's available in the market is not meeting the needs. So he comes up with a new cream. He sits down, takes time off from his, not takes time off. He works more hours than his consulting and his patient care to find time in the nights and the evenings to come up with a formulation that then produces a new cream that he gives to his patients, right? And the patients give him feedback on how to improve the cream. They iterate and improve this. What Dr. Tay has is he has an insight. He has an epiphany that one of the reasons in Singapore that people don't apply this cream is don't apply the creams is they need to apply repeatedly, and it's very oily, very sticky, and behaviorally it's hard for people to keep reminding themselves to reapply the cream, right? So he then has an epiphany. Then he introduces a little bit of menthol into this, and when menthol evaporates, it produces a cooling feeling, and this cooling feeling then makes the patients associate the applying of the cooling feeling to the relief they get from cooling feeling. So it changes their behavior so that then they seek to apply this cream. Whenever they think about pain, they immediately think about the cooling feeling it comes, they're more likely to apply. It's the formulation and the combination of the behavioral change that Dr. Tay's cream leads to has led to fantastic improvement in their daily lives. Right? So this is the breakthrough lead user innovation developed by Dr. Tay at the National Skin Care Center. Then there are entrepreneurs here who then hear about this product and come license it from Dr. Tay and take it to the market. Right? So what I tell my students at SMU when they study innovation is think about how you can build business models that take innovations to market. I don't want to play the invention game. Invention game is very risky. It may take 5, 7, 10 years and you might not be able to solve the problem, right? I as business students, as well, innovator, as creators, perhaps you should be on this other side of this, demand side of this. Identify inventions, come up with business models that then take them to the market so that you can create value to society, right? So then lead users can be used in similar manner. This example then serves both purposes. For you to identify lead users who have created solutions, and then develop business models that you can scale and grow this so that you create value for society. In this example, Dr. Tay is the lead user because he sits down and comes up with an innovation. It's not the patient with the problem who can't come up with this. It's not the good farmer who's taken the lead user innovation and taken it to the market, but it's Dr. Tay who sits down and creates this. Right? And it turns out good farmers, they've done really well here in other markets with people with persistent eczema and skin care issues. So let me turn and say that's doctors, skincare, and can we find lead users in other domains, right? Other places? Remember, they have to have extreme needs, and no commercially available solution can meet their extreme needs. Some of you know the Dabawalas, right? Have heard about the Dabawalas? I would get a show of hands here or run a poll in class. But here, perhaps, yes, very good. I get a show of hands. Thank you for this, right? Uh, Let me say who the Dabawalas are. The Dabawalas are people who carry lunch in Mumbai from homes to offices and then carry their lunches back, right? So if you know Mumbai, it's linearly organized around the seashore. So they have to go in from all the residences further out of the city into the downtown area where most of these professionals work and deliver this back, right? And what can we learn from them? What is so lead user about them, right? Because they transport things at a very, very low cost, and they have nearly 6 sigma efficiency, that they misplace very few of them, and they don't use complex technology. They've devised a system to sort, deliver day after day these inventions. So they have extreme needs. They have to do at a very, very low price that no other people can take up, right? And then they came up with several innovations, local innovations for them to manage this process, right? So you can think about how you can learn from them. The DHLs of the world, go and study them to get an insight about how they can think about handling costs and handling with logistics transportation, right? So you can look around with a new set of eyes, see needs that push the envelope. Where are these extreme needs? And how then they are tackling these? What are the innovations they are coming up there that are not widely available in the marketplace? And that gives you insights, right? Then you can take this and then say, okay, where can I take this? Can I build a business model? Can I create value for society by making this widely available? Okay. And the third and final last example I want to provide to you is from 3M medical systems, right? 3M is a large company that does lots of R&D in medical, surgical, and then if you think about paint sticking on, sticking off, their legendary post-it note, which really set them apart, right? So 3M is this device that has lots of expertise, competence, patents in drapes and surgical equipments. They wanted to come up with a new aged surgical drapes for operative care. What happens with the post-operative care in lots of regions around the world is that there are infections post-operation for a variety of reasons. So when 3M wanted to come and tackle this problem, they decided to take a lead user innovation approach. So they said, who can we learn from that will help us set this develop this product? So they consulted many people. Two sources stand out, right? One of them was vets. They picked vets with the lowest post-operative infection rate. Why did they pick vets? They picked vets because most of the patients of the vets, as they in the video they say, is they don't bathe. Your dogs don't bathe as regularly as this, or your farm animals don't bathe as regularly, right? So then the vets have a version of post-operative skin and surface infections that are magnifold higher than in humans. If you go to the vet who's done this well repeatedly and has lower post-operative problems, then you want to know what are the processes, how do they do this, what do they do, what are the routines they follow, right? So they learned from them. The next they went to is in the development world, where they went to places like Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and looked at primary healthcare centers where minor surgeries were done, who had excellent post recovery and limited infections. They learned from them about how they handled drapes and how they did this. They incorporated this into their product and service to develop a highly efficient yet cost effective system of drapes that are useful for surgery around the world, right? So the third example then tells you how you can create a product or service using the knowledge about lead user process, that you can take this lead user process for the people who wanted to become corporate entrepreneurs, lead entrepreneurs. You can think about starting lead user inventions as a part of your arsenal when you think about innovations, right? Okay, now this is the third example. I am at 12:40, right? I am doing fine on time, right? So now let me turn and then say, I've given you an example, a small toy task. I got you to do something. Then I explained what lead user concept is. I've given you further examples of lead user concept, both from the region and from other parts of the world. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how, for the people who said who want to lead innovation and become corporate entrepreneurs and leaders in your organization, how you can use lead users process in your organizations. Sorry, let me go back. Yeah, that was one click too many in the animation. I just want all the animation up there. So think about teams. The idea is to set up cross-functional teams, right? And you need to have management support and to identify what are areas your organization wants to focus on. Then you want to read literature. You want to identify who these experts are and what these cutting edge techniques are. What we do in network theory is, if how do you identify an expert, is we say it's like a pyramid. You ask somebody who's an expert, saying, hey, who do you go to when you have a difficult version of the problem? The expert then says, points upwards. Then you go to that next expert and then repeat the same question. Who do you go to when you have the problem? As you go through the pyramid, you find that it becomes self-referential. One expert points to the other expert points to the next expert. So then you've reached the apex of this pyramid. Then you've gone to really the experts and their this person, right? And then you ask them, what are the tools? What are the techniques? What are the challenges you are working with, right? So then you learn from this. Then you also, I want to identify what are important trends that might follow, so that you can identify where do you want to focus your attention on. Identification of the trends is an art and science, right? Identification of trends, I will be categorical, is both an art and a science. It's a little bit of intuition, but it's also the science part is, if you know the industry well, if you are experts in the industry, if you consult a wide variety of people in the industry and think about analogous markets, see change where that has come to markets like yours from analogous sources, right? This gives you the pace of change. Where is change coming from and how change is coming from, right? And then that comes to what I want to talk to you about: identify trends. Identify one or important specific trend that you and your organization wants to focus on, right? And then find users who are working with extreme versions of this problem and see what they are doing so that you can learn from them. Let me also give you some trends that might interest you, right? Miniaturization. One of the things we are going from is large systems to smaller and even smaller systems at nanoscale, and all that will transform how we do things, what we do things, right? And we are also looking at really ruggedness, high performance systems, products and services that would withstand really extreme demands placed on them. And the third example is, I talked about, for example, the Dabawalas. How do we bring products and services at the lowest price so that the society is better off, and that more people at the bottom of the pyramid can consume this, right? So if you think about these trends, and then you can see where you could think about. I'm not, I will be candid with you. This is not the only set of trends. These are just an example of set of trends. Recall, I mentioned identification trends is both an art and a science, right? The science part is by studying previous trends and looking at analogous parts. The art part comes from experience, consulting other people, and your ability to synthesize and pull this together. Okay, now let me summarize lead users. Usually in the class, what I would do is in my remote, I have a function where I turn off the screen and then ask my students, right? And my practitioners who I work with. Tell me what lead users are. Explain this to me. Explain to somebody who's not heard the concept, right? So let me try playing this in a different way. I'll go back a slide and now ask you, tell me what lead users are, right? You heard my presentation and talk. Pretend you didn't see the slide ahead. Type out in the chat function, tell me who lead users are and why are they important. They immediately see the problem. They're very observant. They have extreme needs. Very good. PE go. They have extreme needs and they need to solve their problem. Very good. I need to see something which Kasen mentioned again. What did you mention, Kasen? Yeah. Very good, Pigo. Kasen, excellent. They have extreme needs and there are no commercially available solutions. And they have a great incentive to innovate, right? Therefore, they sit down and innovate. Very good, right? They are motivated to innovate because they experience the version of the problem. If you think about Dr. Tay, his patients telling them how difficult life is for them makes this really busy professional doctor to find more time to do what pharmacists should be doing, right? Finding solutions. Very good, very good. Let me go forward and go to the summary again, right? I'll move the chat function away. Lead users have extreme needs and the motivation to solve their extreme needs before a commercially available solution exists in the market. They have extreme needs, the motivation, and before a commercially available solution, right? So they come up with a solution. If you can identify people like this and look at their solutions, you found lead users, right? Now, they're 5 to 7 years ahead of the market typically because there's nothing commercially available. They have to, by definition, be ahead of the market, right? The most important question, though, is will the rest of the market follow? Will the rest of the users will come this way, right? And for that, we said it's both an art and a science form. It is both an art because you can look at the trends that your company, your industry is undergoing, and then also look more broadly, right? And then you can work with this. And systematic evidence that have been collected in literature across different industries and different such studies show that lead users are a source of breakthrough innovation, which is a substantial improvement over what products or services are available. So if you want to identify breakthrough innovations systematically, lead users is a very good starting point, is one of the most important starting points. And most importantly, the process can be learned and implemented by you, by all of you and us, if you understand this process. And I've given you an example about how we could think about going through this process, right? I am at 49 now, a minute ahead of what has been allocated to me. I'll pause here and then take questions from you. Do we do the questions in the chat or in the Q&A? Let me ask my colleagues in this. Let's do the questions in the chat function because I have the chat on. Otherwise, I'll need to have both of these on and attention might be an issue, right? Okay, now go ahead, ask. Thank you for the active participation thus far. You're a really good bunch of people who've been really fast typing out and grasping the concepts. Aha, I get Vanya. Vanya is one of my Masters in Science students who's going to be one of the breakthrough entrepreneurs, we hope. Vanya asks a very interesting question. What if business do not have problems, right? And they come up with a solution. Can they be lead users? Lots of innovation happens like this, right? People in R&D labs come up with products. The research team, the development team makes a product and then goes to the marketing team. The marketing team then tries to market this product. That's the supply push innovation. That's not lead user innovation. Very good. Shiv Charan has a broad question. How do we identify innovations, right? It's in your industry, in your sector. Look at people who have extreme needs and then try to work with them and see how they are solving their extreme needs, right? And we've given you analogous examples, right? Think about the shoes with extreme needs. Think about Tim Berners-Lee. Think about aircraft stopping. Think about Dr. Tay. Think about Dabawalas, right? uh, think about people with extreme needs. How do you identify analogous industries? Right? Very good, Rebecca. I think the intuition you take are from the two things we've already discussed. First is Von Hippel, when Professor Von Hippel talks about aircrafts and brakes in automobiles. The functional need is the same, but the industries have different levels of problem. And think about logistics, DHL, SingPost, SpeedPost, and other post services, FedEx, and the Dabawalas, right? The Dabawalas are doing analogous function, right? In fact, even closely related function, right? It's a very good question, Rebecca. So if you take the insight from these two, then you sit down and see what are analogous industries to different parts of the value chain that we are in, because you might need to think about logistics, you might need to think about product design, you might need to think about costs. These are separate elements, and then you can think about where are the best examples that are being done. It's a very good question. Okay, I started this, Kason, and Kason, you asked the question again, right? You hit the nail on the head second time. It's a very good question, Kason. Is it born or is it made? All of you can be made if you understand the concept, right? And go through this. The lead user process even allows you to learn from the inventors themselves. You don't have to come up with the invention then yourself. You can learn from the inventions and then create an integrated solution that you can take to the market, right? You don't have to be the innovator yourself. You can learn from others, right? Because the great intrinsic need to solve a problem might not exist in everybody, but the innovation process can be learned and done, which is what this is an example of. Inventors and innovators are always, this is a very nice question from Bienvenido that talks about how do you stop about discouraging innovation, right? Most inventions won't work. Not that they won't solve the problem, but they will not be commercially viable. Even most innovations that are taken to the market will fail, right? So you need to be thinking about how do we then think about what can de-risk this process and how do we handle this process, right? But there's also a behavioral side, right? If there are 10 people who are working in the innovation in your company and they have 10 projects, 8 of them fail. So, and 2 will succeed. If you reward 2 of the people who succeed and 8 of the people who have not succeeded, then it's a very bad demotivation. It's a discouragement because innovation is stochastic, right? It fails for many reasons despite the best efforts. So to identify and encourage people for innovation, you shouldn't be giving them outcomes based solely on outcomes. You shouldn't be basing their reward solely on outcomes. Lots of large innovative companies have different processes which they encourage innovation even of failed projects so that people can learn, try, and become more innovative. Okay, I see some questions from Vetek that says about IP rights and secrecy, right? I am not a lawyer, right? I don't want to say too much that then will have legal implications. But what I want to say is if inventions are out there in the market, right, then, and you can observe them and then you can integrate them, you are drawing on things that is not patent protected, right? And it's in the knowledge is in the public domain, then you should be fine. But it's always good to consult a patent lawyer or an IP lawyer on these matters, right? Are we hitting limits of invention? Are we the low-hanging fruits? Susan, very good question. The low-hanging fruits are all gone. How do we then come up with new ways of doing things, right? So one way to think about this is to think about breakthrough science that is coming from universities, labs that would fundamentally transform energy usage and other aspects of this, right? But science takes a lot of time to build, and then the complementary infrastructure needed for the new science to come to play takes a longer period of time. We should be investing those resources in science and science related activities, right? We should also be doing the complementary work, which is there are already lots of solutions out there, that are not seeing the light of the day. Potentially valuable solutions are not being taken to the market because there are no innovators. Innovators take things to the market. There are many solutions. If you go to the universities, if you go to the labs, there are hundreds of patents, right? But they don't go to the market. Now, the question is, are we now only getting these marginal inventions or these breakthrough inventions, right? And if you look at the lead user process, they are a source of these breakthrough inventions, over 100% improvement, first of the kind. So if you really want breakthrough inventions that are immediately applicable to the market, Susan, the evidence provided by Von Hippel, his colleagues, PhD students, and then the literature and the examples I provided is we need to take a look at lead users because they are making these leaps, over 100% improvement in solutions in some cases, right? So if you are exhausting improvements here, all the more reason to consider lead users. Okay, I'm at 57. Perhaps there's time for one more question. You've been fantastic audience, right? You've been participating throughout. You've been asking really insightful questions. I thoroughly enjoyed this. One last question. Okay, thank you. I'll take one last question from Q&A. Lee, it's an interesting question as well. How do we anchor lead user if the production or service is a brand new concept, right? So the importance of lead user process is there is at least some person with a need and some person who's come up with a solution. There are many challenges next to solve. Then the question is, can you make this more general and will the rest of the market follow? But if you yourself come up with a brand new concept and brand new thing, then it's a supply push. Will the market take it? Market won't take it. We don't know, right? Then you go down to then market validation, market testing, and things like that. With the lead users, you are on a separate pathway. You already see a problem, difficult, very difficult problem. You already see a solution. Now you want to think about how do you take it general and the rest of the market follows, right? So these are two separate sort of pathways that both can lead to success, but follow different logics and different dynamics, right? So if it's a brand new product that you are coming out without already solution out there by a user with a specific problem, extreme version of the problem, you are in the more traditional supply push. It's a very good question for us to think about the distinction between lead users and the traditional supply push innovative process. Okay, I'm at time now. Thank you for the last and very good question, Q&A. And again, I hope you learned something about a concept. You understood the definition of the concept. You understood what the concept is about, and how you can take this concept to become more innovative for your organizations as entrepreneurs, as change makers. It's a great pleasure having this interactive conversation even in Zoom. I thank you for the opportunity and have a wonderful rest of the Wednesday. Thank you. Bye.